Hi, welcome everybody. You are watching our webinar for moving and commuting. My name is Steve Wheeler. I'll be your host today and the ultimate in demoing our application. We are here to help you with workspace, work, and workers. As we ramp up our offices, we have a lot of changes coming in. With me today is Jim, the great Bilbao. So Jim Will is the resident nation's leading expert on people productivity, health conscious, commute hours, and home to work commuting. Everybody say hi, Jim. Hi, Jim. All right, today we're gonna be talking about changes in the workplace, changes for employees and your customers. McKinsey and Company posted this about a week ago as this is being recorded. And it's talking about ramp up time and re-ramp up time. So we're somewhere in this down cycle here. And really, it's about how we are going to start working together again, not behind Zoom, not behind our phone, not behind our monitors in our house, but how we're going to start working together again and start ramping up employees in the office. What do we need to do in the office? How do we get the right equipment, the right space, the right number of people? What do we need to do to get that office open again? And then as we do ramp it up again, what do we do with our employees as time goes on? How do we start with the new space design that we're going to need? And how do we help our employees with where they live and how they're going to commute? Everything's going to be changing. Transit's probably not going to be taken. Van pools are not going to be taken. Carpools are not going to be taken. There's going to be big changes in the workplace, and we're going to talk about how we can help you. So certainly, COVID's driving the big issues. The CFOs are trying to figure out how they keep cash flow going, how they can reforecast sales, but certainly also, is it time they have to relook at office real estate? Are we using about 150 square feet per employee? But with COVID, I think the recommendation is somewhere near 225 or 250. So does that mean we downsize one office and we might have to have something else to really right size our operations if we still want to come back to the office? How much are we going to actually grow our telework programs? How are we going to do our office restart? How are we going to be prepared? What are the things we need to do? And then certainly, what do we need from an operational innovation standpoint? How do we make the checklist of who would be available to telework and who should be in the office? How do we do that ranking? How do we bring all of this into one place, one platform? It's the office evolution. And the office evolution, do we need to take employee temperature when they walk in the door? Right now, we're telling any businesses that are opening to the public, they need to take the person's temperature and be wearing masks and gloves and to have some sort of a barrier in front of them. What do we need to do in the office space? Certainly, we're going to telework more often. Now we've gotten a little used to it. Now we are thinking about what are the long-term programs. But as we are selling to our customers, as we're working with employees, we still need to have that face-to-face interaction to get certain things done, to actually get paperwork done. There's still fax machines for a lot of companies out there that work. I have to pick up certain things that have to be signed. So there still is a lot of things that we need to do face to face. And how do we plan for that new office evolution? So we know pre-COVID is about somewhere in the national average of 3 to 6% at best for telework. Maybe in other locations, we'll be talking a lot about Seattle or Atlanta or New York or some of the other cities. There might have been a little bit higher. But then when COVID hit, not all office completely stopped. There's still executives going in the office. There's still employees that go into the office that have to be there. But it dropped significantly, as we all know, and telework went way up for some industries. Other industries in the manufacturing sector haven't been doing much of anything, but they're going to be ramping up. So what is that going to do? Well, one of the things it's going to be doing is we may increase telework, but one thing that's going to significantly increase as we do ramp up month 1, 3, 12 month, we know what's going to increase significantly is the amount of cars on the streets. What's going to increase significantly is the amount of how the employees are going to be interacting with the office. What is going to increase significantly is certainly where we're going to be from an office standpoint. And we're going to have to evaluate all of those areas for our employees. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Belbow, and take it away, Jim.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everybody. I'll try and be as clear as possible in this very complicated time that we're in and get to the simple insights. First of all, as Steve mentioned, across many industries, work from home really hasn't been a very significant part of how those industries operate. Yes, there's going to be opportunity to increase work from home in certain industries and in certain departments, but those departments and industries that are dependent on a particular asset, let's say it's a manufacturing line, or dependent on a particular team, enterprise technology is very team-oriented, or dependent on work with specific customers, maybe patients as an example. They don't work from home. Or an industry is maybe dependent on something else. There's plenty of reasons why work can't be done from home and won't be done significantly from home. So it's going to be incumbent upon executives to figure out for each role how dependent it is to work from a facility or an office versus home, and continue along the path that we've been on since pretty much 2000 of optimizing least amount of commute burden for the jobs that have to be done. Next. So top of mind from employees' perspective, will I have a job? How can I perform my job? Will the job I have be safe to return to? If it's not safe, I may be looking for a different job. Will it be flexible enough if I have to accommodate childcare, for example? Will my income be reduced in the job that I have? Or can I make up for lost ground somehow? Workers will be thinking about all of these things in deciding whether to stay with the employer they're at today or look for something that is more flexible, more healthy, maybe more attractive because there's higher income or it's closer to home, less stressful, any of these things. Next. As Steve mentioned, we'll flatten the curve and get to the downside of the curve, but it's there's research that finds that the 20% of employees, or maybe it's 40% in Seattle, of employees who've been on transit, a third of them are going to return to their cars, which means that even if we have recession or depression, and let's say 10% of workers don't return to the workforce, there'll be a greater than 10% number who return to driving their cars. It's highly likely commute times, commute inflexibility will rise much faster than anyone expected. And this as well will become a driver of turnover, a driver of workforce productivity and health. Next. And so employers need to balance solving for productivity, for performance loss, absenteeism, turnover cost in this new context, with some things being done more from home, some things being continuing to be done from the office. We'll be smarter about it. The winners in the industries will be those that achieve transition faster with better insights, better data, and better programs. Next. Before COVID, we had a conversation with employers about, okay, out of total payroll spend, maybe a third of it goes to benefits, the remaining 25% of total overhead is payroll. Half of that gets spent by employees on housing and transportation, which means 12, 13, 14%, maybe higher of total people spend is buying houses and cars. If employees are choosing longer commutes, then those longer commutes become higher costs for employers from the workforce turns over more, it's sick more, it's stressed more, it's harder to manage, it doesn't collaborate as well, all these type of factors from terrible commutes. Now we have the additional issue of if an employer doesn't progress to offering remote work, telework, as efficiently as its peers, then employees bring avoidable costs into the office as commuters. And so this conversation is about managing this area of spend, optimizing this area of spend, the half of payroll that buys houses and cars and determines whether they commute or they telework and how they do that. Next. When turnover happens because of these factors, then costs are typically much higher than employers are able to identify through their business intelligence. Most employers don't have commute burden data across their workforce by function to recognize when the costs of bad commute or inadequate work from home, either one, are showing up as bad attitude or showing up as incremental healthcare costs or showing up as errors, omissions, and interruptions to production, or if they're at the very high expense range and they produce turnover that affects either new product development, time to market, services and margin, or in the worst case, sales force turnover and loss of customers. Next. So what we had said prior to COVID was you can track the turnover produced by crappy commutes to each line of the income statement. What we're saying after COVID is you can and should be doing the same type of analysis with work from home in addition to commute burden from home. Next. So we've talked extensively about what happens when you have bad commutes, or what we haven't talked about was the dividends, the long-term dividends of having short, easy commutes by a workforce. So this is results of a study by a major healthcare conglomerate, and they tracked both performance and turnover over 7 years with a population that moved closer to work. You see tremendously valuable contributions to retention, but more importantly, to performance. And we could say the exact same thing about employers that transition to enabling more work from home. The thing about work from home is it is more easily replicated. All industry players are trying to do more work from home and derive a performance dividend as well as a retention dividend. What's true about relocation closer to work is it is much more unique and much more enduring. The employee who moves closer to work may well not be poachable. Next. So we talked about insights that you should have about just your own workforce. Let's say your workforce commute burden, including people who don't commute at all, people who commute some, people who commute every day. It's pretty easy to understand. You want to reduce commute burden on the remote people. You want to prevent the people who have no commute burden today from moving far away from the office. But there's an additional perspective, which is innovative, which we're so proud to be the first to bring to market, which is the ability to benchmark this commute burden curve for each employer against their industry peers. We built a unique database for 20 key industries, looking at 1,500 work sites for 350,000 workers to recognize this trait of operating and financial efficiency. We'll talk more about that later. Next. I alluded to this before. It's very easy to name all the cost drivers of bad commute, to correlate them to each line of the income statement, whether it's sales, gross, operating income. We can tie them to increased use of facilities and therefore capital costs, and get to an aggregated number for net income. We have a very robust calculator that can help a CFO today go through the estimates of what it means to become more remote work oriented, and what it means to not be able to be remote work oriented, but be able to make changes in proximity of workforce to work. Next. What we find is very true is most employers have no idea how big the opportunity is in regards to employees who move voluntarily, and secondly, the importance of the commute decision and whether an employer can hire. So fantastically, roughly 40% of candidates consider commute when deciding whether to accept a role at a new employer. Secondly, 100% or 40%, more than 40% of current employees will consider their commute and whether to stay or not. Next.
So I'm going to inject here, Jim. So now, as we think about that, as employees think about whatever their next job is, now that we've got a taste, or now there's been so much that has the taste of teleworking, how is that going to affect certainly the long-term turnover? If telework worked now, why can't it continuously work? Why do I have to go in the office? And if I do get forced to go to the office, does that mean you're going to have a workforce that changes? And that workforce that changes, or do we help them find a closer place to commute from? I'll introduce that thought. Jim, go ahead.
Thanks, Steve. As I mentioned before, employees have new demands on them as to why they're thinking about staying and why they would think about leaving. And they may think, I don't need to be at the office. Conversely, an employer may determine that they do. It's going to, as it has been for the last 20 years, it's going to be a shifting sands as each job and role evolves. So there will be roles that need to continue to be on site and some that can be remote. An opportunity the market is completely and totally missing here during these troubling times is related to employees who voluntarily move. In very round numbers, 1 out of 5 of your employees will move every year voluntarily. That will be about half of your workforce over 3 years. In very round numbers, the average lease in America is 2.5 years. When you do the math, that means 13% of your employees will move this year because they were renters and it was just time. The other 7% are people who own a home. They sell it, it's just time for them. They sell their home, they buy a new home, and they're moving about every 10 years. That will contribute another 7%. You'll hire 10% replacement workforce. Another 2% of them will move every year. So these are the numbers in broad brush strokes. This is an opportunity to help those with the longer commutes to become your most productive, most retained workers. Next. Employers don't typically provide this type of help except for their top 1% of executives who they'll relocate from anywhere in the country. We all know that employees have been asking to work from home to lower their commute burden for a few years. Well, if you ask them, would you like help to live closer to work? The exact same percentage of them will say, absolutely, I'd love a shorter commute. And furthermore, I'd love my employer to help with it. Employers don't know how to do that. We have new solutions to make that possible now. Next. So what are the solutions? So 2 buckets of them. Actually, now there's 3 buckets. One bucket is how to work remotely better. One bucket is how to move closer to work. And the third bucket is how to optimize the commute in regard to the second 2. Both the people who are moving and the people who aren't moving have an interest in the better commute. And we'll talk more about these programs later. For the people who are moving, it's about changing their preferences to prefer to be closer, giving them employer site-centric tools to search for the least commute burdened options that meet their budget and household needs. And then the third piece is financial tools and financial resources that increase the purchasing power of their payroll dollars. So without increasing payroll, we increase their purchasing power with it. In the commute area, it's managing all of the resources and programs associated with helping them to find the ideal commute from within one platform together with the other 2 areas of solution offering. Next. And so at a very high level, very simply, employers today have salary portals, they have insurance portals, and they have retirement portals. We're saying that for the half of payroll that goes to housing and transportation and now home office, you should have a portal for that with all of those solutions. Very simple. Next.
So with that, we have one platform, one solution that has, just like we talked in the last slide, we have these, or you can show the portal for your benefits of retirement, your insurance, your 401k, all those. But how do we have that portal also that really takes care of your employees? How do we have that portal that we can take requests for the COVID care package as they come back to the office? How do we have that one portal that's going to have that information? Well, our Amazon Web Service platform happens to be the force.com or Salesforce. That's our back end that gives us one place for flexibility we deploy things called communities, and communities could be your office in Atlanta, your office in Seattle, your office in Detroit, could all be different communities where the employees are able to go in and see what's happening with their office place. What do I need to have to go to the office? What do I need to go reserve? And then the back end is all the reporting that you need to do. And so it can be both a mobile application as well as something you load on your laptop. So we have a suite of applications that we deploy for your employees that help you ramp up as you have more employees come back to the office. And then we help to optimize as time goes on. What are the options that those employees have for the office, reserving, commuting, and then when they go decide to move, which is 20% of the time. I absolutely see we're going to see increase without question. Employees have been cooped up in apartments and the leases are coming up and it's time to go. And they're going to want to get out of those apartments and go somewhere where they're not going to be all cooped up where they've been the last 3 months. We're going to see a big shift in demand of where people are going to go, which is going to be a shift in demand of where employees are going to want to work. It's going to be a big change. So let's talk about the platform. Here we are. So it's a portal Your employees have their own IDs. They come in here and log in. They can update the profiles if they want to get information downloaded. If they want to sign up for benefits, they can update the profile. So it can be employee profile or commuter profile. This is just a place where you go and update your profile, the information about you, your commute, your office. You can put in here what your telework options are. Even if there's other things that we want to collect information. This is just showing everything that we have inside of here to collect about their employees and how they are commuting today or where they are commuting to. We can have them sign up for Commuter Benefits. Pause. Excuse me. They could go in and purchase transit passes online. They could sign up for their commuter benefits to pay for the transit passes or for van pool information. They could take their commuter survey online. They could go join commuter groups like the Telework group, the Bike to Work group, the Walk to Work group, the Run to Work, the Run at Lunchtime group. But this is the place where we can post information. We can post our group for signing up for any COVID information, as well as we can have a place. So in here, we talked about earlier, this is showing, and we haven't loaded up all the employees, but this is just an example in Seattle of employees around the Renaissance Hotel. We can show, and this is really important for you too, we only have like 10 employees loaded here, but we can load up all 5,000 of your employees, show where all the locations. So if you do have to go from that 150 square foot office space and you need to expand it because now the COVID says that you have to be at 250, 300 square feet per employee, even though we might have furloughed or lost some of our employees or some are teleworking, we might not have enough space, or we might want to downsize and go to another office space. We now can see where all of our employees are. We can load that up in 10 minutes. Import your information. Your executives can go see this, or you could use this to understand where your employees are coming from, to understand where you want to put your next office, as well as any of the discussion points that are going on. If you want to post with the latest things for the office, that you're scheduling folks that they come in 1 hour shifts or 2 hour shifts and then they have to go, or where they go for, maybe they're going to request for their care package, their COVID care package, or they need to request masks for being in the office, or temperature controllers, or they just need to see around the Seattle area, what are my options around the Seattle area for the new commuter options and benefits I can go sign up for. I can also look to see what is my company doing with sustainability. What are we saving? What's our savings our company's generating with CO2 savings, or what are we generating with our commuter savings plan? So we can even show anything as it relates to dashboards. As well, we can create and optimize, as Jim mentioned earlier, we can go optimize their commute plan. So if I'm in here, I happen to be the Chandler person. He's a friendly guy. And we can go optimize their commute to the office so they could see all of their commute options as it relates to what they have to commute to the office. Normally I had this preloaded. I didn't preload it for this time. Madison Street, Seattle, Washington, 98104, and I leave at, I want to be there at 9 a.m. What are my options? So I can go take a look at, this is where I'm coming from, that's where I'm commuting to. I want to see what are my transit options that I have. So we can go out and optimize and show what are every option that they have, whether it's a company shuttle, carpool, van pool, what are my options to go? It's probably not walk, run with that distance, but I can go take a look at what are my options to look at from a transit standpoint, or bicycling, or even if I want to go see what are the available carpools within the company, what are the available van pools, do we offer a shuttle? but having that one place to go to for all of my optimizing all of my commute options. And finally, we can also, with doing a little bit of homework here, we can take a survey and find out what is optimal for that employee. Jim had mentioned in one of his statistics was saying 20% of all employees, 20% of all employees move every year. That's a significantly high number. That's more the folks that of any other benefit out there that are continuously, think about that, moving, and we're not offering them any assistance in optimizing it for them as well as for us. We want to optimize the productivity of giving them a shorter commute and showing them better options that they have. So we can take a survey, find out what are the things that that employee wants, and then finding closer. We offer a portal that shows with the commute time that they want. We are optimizing what commute time do they want, what mode do they choose. Would they want to ride rail? Would they want to walk? And they can find the homes that are available for them. We can load it up to send them alerts when something does fall maybe in their price range or their beds or whatever fits their profile. We can load it to them. They could pick one of these locations and say, boy, I want the 2.5 million. And we can send this out as a service to say, contact me. And we can send it over to one of our internal agents. And I say that internal agents. We didn't hit this on this real hard. So Cousin Eddie is who usually is my real estate agent, and Cousin Eddie wants to make sure he doesn't really give anything other than I pick something as fast as possible so they can get that commission. We set you up with a team that is an optional service that can help with the employee to find the best location for the best commute, for the best fit for what their needs are, and it'll take them into account. We optimize that, and our agents are designed to be able to look at what is in best for the employee, what is in best and have best for the employer as well when taking that into account. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. As well as when they're selling their location, their property, how do they get the maximum benefits for their property? We also have, if we wanted to go in and add requests for items that they need, we can put requests in here. We also have time entry for those that are doing remote work, can do that as well. So that gives you a little introduction into the application. I could probably spend the next 4 or 5 hours going through the demonstration of all the applications we have inside of here. We're going to talk about the value, and I didn't hit that as hard, but we're going to talk about the value that we are collecting the information. So inside of here, we had built dashboards, and we'll talk about that here in a second, is dashboards on measuring the moving closer savings, measuring the commute savings, and giving back to the community. So one of the things that we can talk about in here, let's go back into the dashboard really quick into the live application. Scroll down here at the bottom. Let's take a look at that dashboard real quick. So this is actually live data around the Seattle area. Certainly they're not called General Hospital and Grey's Anatomy, but it is live data around the Seattle area about some employers and some of the sample data we may have. And basically what we get is we can find out, we know if we get an employee's home address, we know what their work address is. Take Google, come back with an API, tells us the driving distance, tells us how long the commute is. We're looking at peak rush hour. We want to know for the most part, and then even if they tell us when they're leaving to work or when they're getting to work and when they're returning, we can use that data to calculate what is the average driving distance and the average driving time that Google is doing based off of what's happening at that day. During the week, we pick a Tuesday during the week to collect that data when it's the arrival time and departure time, just so it doesn't have holidays or other things associated with it for the most part. So we can see the average driving time for and how you stack against your other employers around your area. And we can also then start calculating the cost, as Jim had alluded to earlier. There's a cost for how much employees are driving to the office. There is a cost to the turnover because employees are going to turn over based off their drive time. So these three here are some of the worst out there because they have a lot of employees that drive over 60 minutes both ways every day, and that causes them to want to go to another location or to another employer. Same thing over here. There's also absenteeism, definitely linked to commutes. Absenteeism's, you're commuting over an hour, you're going to 3-4 days a year saying, I'm not going in the office, I'm playing hooky today. Same thing as relating to the health provider. Guess what? Sitting in the car definitely affects obesity, affects depression, affects anxiety. Raise your hand, everybody listening to my voice. If you've been commuting for 1 hour in the car and you walk in the office about ready to scream when you're coming home, you want to tear into the spouse, it definitely causes stress and anxiety for those long commutes. We collect that information, we report on that information, and Mr. CFO, we can show you the savings that you can get. So let's talk about some of that savings. We can talk about that savings as it relates to each one of those categories. And so from a employer programs standpoint, we can take a look at the entire commuter savings that we have based off of parking space, based off of commuter programs, based off of if you're running a shuttle, based off of if they're riding other such as the transit or bus. We can calculate that savings for you when it matters to the CFO. This is an example of 5,000 employees in a company at a location. So moving closer, those 20% of our movers out there, what's the ROI? So we gave an example of the average per employee. Well, if you look at some of that average, man, this company that is the worst in class here, what is it, Everett, the General Hospital Everett? There's $190 million they're spending because of their employees driving that long distance to the work because they have more turnover costs, they have more lost costs due to the drive time, they have more healthcare costs because of absenteeism, they have more healthcare costs because they could do a better job of negotiating with their insurance provider because of having shorter commutes, like the better in class companies. So finally, the last thing I want to cover in there too is being able to, we talked about it, how do we put that program of prefer closer so that your employees can find that property, can sell their property, and we can help you with a dedicated set of resources to help them in that transaction of finding the right place to go to. All right, so with, forgot one more last thing, the carbon offset credit. So we want to say, hey, how good I'm doing for the community. That doesn't mean I have to buy 10,000 trees in South America. And we can track the carbon offset that we are doing for our community, for our company, and really show it to our employees by them having a better commute, by them doing a better job of even moving closer to the office. So it's the new benefit. MoveCom provides that new benefit. We talked about earlier, there's a benefit of retirement plans, there's health insurance, there's paid vacation, there's workout plans, you can get a gym membership, you could get a Fitbit tied to your wrist to show that you're doing more exercise. But we will say if you do a better job in optimizing your commute, optimizing the employee when they are making that, those 20% that are making that choice to go move somewhere else, that you are optimizing what their commute is to the office and reducing that commute to the office. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim. Jim, take it over.
All right, thank you, Steve. Let's shift to employee journey. So what's it like for employees to work with us with these new opportunities? Very simply, it's like launching any other productivity benefit. There's auto registration. You want everybody to be in the program because it ties to productivity. From there, they complete a profile of what help they would like to be more productive, happier, healthier employees, and we match them to programs. We provide programmatic plans for them and customer service to ensure that no opportunity is ever missed, as well as applications that help them to accomplish their goals. Then they go about executing. We ask on the back end net promoter score whether this was a fantastic experience and high value for them, and they would recommend it to every other employee. Our recommendations along those lines are fantastic. Can't wait to share them with you. Next. To reiterate my statements earlier, your target audiences, the 20% who are moving, they get move and mode support, and we are saving them time and money. The contribution to your business is a reduction in turnover, improvement in health, improvement in engagement. We hear that there are almost no companies that are doing this sort of thing for new hires to help them consider and make a decision to join an employer faster, more reliably with this sort of thing. They get the same solution. And then you have the 80% of the workforce that isn't moving this year, just because they will move in a different year. And for these people, they get modal help and they get work from home help. And this accomplishes what we've discussed in engagement and productivity and savings. Next. So what do executives say about this? These are comments from a large telecom CFO who had challenges of relocating an office, and his comments were, when we move employees into the ideal watershed, service delivery rises, that means revenue rises, volume goes up, costs come down, everybody wins, turnover goes down, and there are capital savings as well. More generally, KPIs that this solution set ties to: employee engagement or experience, customer sat, revenue, margin, operating expenses, capital expense. Sorry, I don't need to read that for you. Go ahead. Next.
My favorite time is story time. Love me some story time. So let's see, we could pick out one of these customers of ours. Let's talk about, I'm going to go back with my favorite. I'm going to go back with the Stanford Research Park Group. There's a couple more in here, but that's a good one to talk about. EDM Specialist is actually another good one, but I like the Stanford crew because the automation that we are doing in there is they have roughly about 42,000 commuters that go into the Stanford Research Park with about 240 companies, and those 240 companies are changing consistently with a few exceptions, but there's a lot that come in. They have a lease for a year, they change, and a new set comes in. They have a lot of employee turnover. They also have a lot of commuter options. And so they have this need to have a portal for different employers to be able to come in, be able to message when a new hire comes in or a new employee comes on board. How do we get them their options? How do we let them know they have limited parking around that area, have expensive parking, they have a boatload of traffic. So they are really encouraged to take the multiple different programs, whether it's shuttles, it's trains, it's buses, it's biking, it's finding a closer location. So it really runs the gamut. And we really have gone in and helped automate the process, which used to be a manual. I send out a single email to each one that's asking me. I go and do the research. They had a team that could never get back to anybody in time. We've automated that process for them. And there are 240 companies that they have around there. And it's a really awesome story. We'd love to talk to you some more. My name is Steve Wheeler, been here as a presenter. Jim Bilbao, the wonderful guy of national accreditation on helping employees move closer to the office. We'd love to talk to you. Here's our contact information. Please feel free to reach out and send us a note, and we can get back to you. Jim, any closing thoughts?
Well, I would ask that everybody think for just a moment about the one or two most significant things that we talked about related to your business, and send us an email to ask about those. And if there's somebody else in your company for whom these are relevant as well, who should be added to this conversation, please send us an email. Let's open the conversation. We humbly submit that this area, the half of payroll going into houses and cars at companies all across the country, is probably the single largest, still unoptimized component of corporate spend in America. It's a huge opportunity, and we would love to chat with you about how to make more of it than you are able to make today. Thank you very much. We wish you a safe and productive rest of the day.
Thank you. And record.